Islamic extremism is a real threat everywhere, all around the world. And I say that as someone who grew up in Indonesia. So I say that as someone who has a deep respect for mainstream Muslims, peace-loving Muslims, and they exist en masse, which is why I call on their voices to come out loudly. I think that's what I felt really disappointed in, is a lack of more moderate Muslim voices coming out and condemning this, because it hurts them so much, coming out and saying that is not who we are. They do not represent us. That is not our religion.
And now I'm so excited, fangirling right now, for incredible broadcaster Erin Molan, all the way from Australia here in Jerusalem. Welcome.
Oh, Fleur, thank you so much. It's so nice to finally meet you in person, having spoken to you and gone back and forth for so long. But it's a real honour and a privilege to be here.
Well, it's an honour for us, Erin, that you keep coming back to Israel.
Oh, it's incredible. It's fast becoming one of my favourite places. And it's not just because a lot of people like me here. Mind you, I do enjoy that.
You must be walking down the street and getting stopped every 2 minutes, right?
It's crazy and it's lovely, but I've got to get better at identifying who the huggers are and who the huggers are not, because there's obviously a very significant religious population here. And people get very emotional when they meet me and I like to show them that it means a lot to me as well. So my inclination is to hug and twice this morning.
Oh dear.
Oh no, sorry, I don't touch other women. I don't. Oh,
so let
help
me give you a little tip.
It's so awkward.
Let me give you a little tip. If they're wearing a black kippah, or a hat, it's a no.
Okay, see that's
all right. If they're wearing,
that would have been helpful a day ago.
If they're wearing a colourful kippah,
yes,
it's probably a yes, especially when they see a woman like you.
Okay.
They'll make the exception.
And I don't force myself. I just. But even one man's wife was like, "Oh, sorry, he doesn't touch other women." I was like, "Oh God, I promise I'm not after your man. I'm so sorry."
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. But black. Anything black on their head, it's a no.
Okay, that's the main tip. So good for me to know. But look, everyone is so beautiful and lovely, and I feel really valued here, which is a nice way to feel.
Well, you are valued, and one of the reasons why you're valued is because you were one of the lone voices in the middle of the, I would say, media lynch against Israel that came out and said, "Oh no, I'm not playing this game." And my first question to you is, what was it about your background, how you were raised, that you became that voice at that moment?
It's a great question. My dad is such a big part of who I am, and we lost him a couple of years ago. He was my hero in every single way, shape and form. And I learned from a very young age, not through his words, but by watching him. He was a man of incredible moral courage. He was brave. He was strong. He did what was right always, even when it was difficult, even when there were consequences that would not benefit him. He had just this insane ability to serve with honour and integrity. And he was in the army, a major general, and then he entered parliament after he left the military. And he holds a record for most individual votes of any politician in Australian history.
Which means he was present. He was there. He took it seriously.
He was phenomenal, and the way he could connect with people. He was this 6'6" major general. He ran the war in Iraq for a year, but he was the kindest, most incredible human being. And through so many interactions, and he and I were incredibly close, and our passions were very much aligned in terms of national security, defence, foreign affairs, that kind of thing. So for me, watching, listening, learning, loving him was essentially the only thing I needed to know right from wrong. And look, I think even without him, you shouldn't need a father who was incredible to look at October 7 and determine who the good people were and who the bad people were.
You would think, Erin.
Crazy. But in terms of any element of moral courage that I possess, it's almost entirely exclusively down to him. And I always feel, he's the public hero of my life, but my mother. I thought Dad was the bravest and most courageous person I'd ever known until I watched my mum nurse him when he was dying. And then I saw courage in a whole new different way. So look, my mum and my dad, I'm blessed. I've been raised by incredible people.
It's amazing to have role models like that.
It is. And it's like life is hard enough. I look at so many people around the world. It is so hard to get by in life, even when you have amazing parents that are there for you to support you. There are so many challenges, so many periods that are tumultuous. So I feel very grateful because I think, gosh, if I didn't have them, where would I be? Nowhere near where I am today. So it's something that I don't take for granted.
I can totally relate to that, having had also a father who was a politician and a strong leader. It forms the way you are and the moral courage, I think, or the
Very much
confidence
so.
at least to stand in the right side.
I think a lot of people have that moral courage inside, not necessarily courage, but judgment. They know right from wrong, but not necessarily the confidence to express that publicly or the courage to do so.
So, Erin, you're Australian from Sydney. Australia used to pride itself even in being such an incredible multicultural society. What the hell happened? How do you see, did you see this coming? What's been happening?
No, I did not in any way. And I don't know if that's because I was naive. I think for me, I'm someone who is so proud of my nation and having a father who served and was willing to die for our country. There's almost nothing that could make me feel ashamed of Australia, but I felt that shame in a real way outside the Sydney Opera House hours after October 7 when people were still being killed, to watch fellow Australians celebrate that massacre, chant hateful incitement towards the Jewish community, and have those images broadcast around the world, I think was a real moment of shame for our nation. We then had a choice as a country. And when I say we, I mean individuals, yes, always have a choice, but any organisation, country, business, whatever it is, the culture is set from the top. Your leader comes out and determines very quickly what you will accept and what you won't. And we failed miserably in that opportunity to say to everyone in our country and globally, this is not who we are. That is not representative of us, and we do not tolerate that on any level. And I think about all those people. It's not about free speech at all, but you cannot support terrorism and you cannot incite violence. Both of those things occurred publicly in front of a landmark that is so quintessentially Australian. Not one person paid a price for that. So everyone else,
nobody was arrested.
Nothing.
And the government didn't come out and say.
Look, I mean, they did what they needed to in terms of, kind of weak rhetoric. Oh no, that's all.
The bare minimum.
Nothing of substance. Nothing significant enough to say we don't tolerate this. And so anyone else in that community and beyond who might have a little bit of anti-Semitism under the surface, who might be looking to jump on something, who might be a useful idiot, looks at that and goes, wait a minute. They got up scot-free. Okay, amazing. Now I'm going to do this and firebomb a synagogue and spray paint cars and set a car on fire. And it all just exploded from there because there was no consequence for that initial horrifying statement to the world about who Australia is and what we stand for. So it spiraled from there. The vast majority of Australians, I promise you, are good, decent people who stand against terrorism. But the issue is they're good, silent people.
And who are these people? Are they from the left, communist? Are they from the Islamo-fascist group? Or are they a combination of all of it?
It's a real mix. I mean, a lot of them are from the Islamic community who clearly support extremism. We've got mosques where people were declaring October 7 a celebration in our country, et cetera, et cetera. Also the far left. Absolutely the far left in terms of, we would have women who would try and get someone fired from a workplace because they complimented a woman's dress. That's sexist, that's degrading, that's misogynistic.
You can't talk anymore.
Here I am marching for Hamas, who murder, rape, burn children.
Who marry 12-year-old girls.
Correct. So the far left is just completely eaten itself alive in this space, but seemingly has no awareness of the fact because they do it without any shame whatsoever.
Well, they're so sanctimonious that they won't listen, they can't hear, and they've already made up their minds. The government of Australia at the moment is from the left. Do you envision that in the next election it's going to flip?
Oh, look, I hope so, desperately. I mean, our Prime Minister was at pro-Palestinian marches when he was at university on campuses. So you think about that. Our foreign minister, in terms of the United Nations and in terms of our public support for a democratic ally against terrorists, has been almost non-existent. In fact, it's been the opposite. It has been disgraceful, in my opinion. There's an election coming up in a couple of months. It's very tight, potentially a minority government, which is going to be awful for everyone. But I hope and I pray that the vast majority of Australians do the right thing and kick the current mob out, because we need it. We need change in our country. The Greens, who have a lot of power in Australia, they can't even condemn Hamas as terrorists. They are the most appalling group of people who purport to stand for the environment, but instead have turned themselves into this pro-terrorism party that stands at the complete opposite end of what we should value as Australians.
Well, absolutely. And if you're going to look at the environment, you could look at environmental terrorism that comes from these terrorist groups. They will ignore it. And then you have Israel, who is one of the biggest exporters of clean and green energy, and they'll ignore that or say that we're greenwashing. So you can't win.
Of course, you can't. I think even someone was telling me on October 7, and I haven't seen it really anywhere else, but apparently a whole group of food supply, chickens, etc., was completely wiped out. And I kind of think, so the Greens are the people that chain themselves to chicken coops and say don't kill chickens, but they're marching with people who, I mean, if they don't care about the humans, at least care about the chickens. But no, we don't care about chickens when it's terrorists killing them. Like, they are just so compromised, so flawed.
Compromise, I think, is definitely the word. You know, what I struggle with, Erin, and you now have been traveling all around the world. You're doing some very high-level broadcasting on X. How do we get out of the echo chamber of the people that are on our side? Because those people are already on our side. Then you've got, the way I see it is, I mean, very rough, of course. 15% of people hate us. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to hate you. 15% of people love us, and they're with you. And then you've got the people in the middle. And they, depending on who they speak to, they're going to be this way or that way, or they don't care. How do we get to them?
It's a great question. And this is what I am trying to do so much in the work that I am putting together and in my broadcasts and my segments. And look, they're unique, absolutely. I'm different in how I like to engage people and talk to people and get my point out there. But I think you're right. I think there is an element of society that is evil, malicious. You will never get, you should give up. Who cares? You don't want them.
Wasted on oxygen.
Wasted on, absolutely. Yeah. The group in the middle, and I use Australia as an example of this. So in my mind, I'm always thinking, who's my audience? It's Cindy. She's a 50-year-old single mom, 3 kids, working 2 jobs, cost of living crisis. She's exhausted. She feels very far away from a conflict in the Middle East. She doesn't watch news. She watches Real Housewives to relax at night. Kids are driving her crazy, et cetera, et cetera. She's in the car driving home with them. ABC Radio's on, which is our public broadcaster. One of the headlines I heard last week, in person, day 500 and something of Israel's illegal invasion of Gaza.
Oh, God.
So for a woman who is not engaged in this at all, not because she's malicious or evil, but because she doesn't have capacity to care about a conflict in the Middle East that she doesn't quite understand affects her as much as it really does. So that now shapes her narrative. She gets out of the car, she'll think, oh, God, those awful Israelis. Yeah, I saw that picture of that baby from Gaza dying as well, those awful people, and then she'll get on with her day. That one line from a news source that she trusts, it's the ABC, will shape her narrative. Another big network in Australia started their story on hostages being released and prisoners being swapped. The opening emotional music of her piece was a Palestinian prisoner on the shoulders of someone else, his mother crying, and the reporter narrates that segment with a family reunion, decades in the making. And so people watching, oh, that's so sweet. And I'm sitting there going, he blew up a bus and killed children. He's a terrorist. But so what they're saying is not incorrect.
No.
It's a family reunion, decades in the making. But what they omit to tell you is why he was separated from his family and the 50 people who are still mourning the loss of whoever he killed. And so people watching that, even just through music, through the way they started, then it's, oh, and these are Israeli hostages were released, blah, blah, blah. So everyday Australians are watching that and they're being made to feel for a Palestinian terrorist.
It's social engineering. It's engineering.
Exactly.
It's engineering of your thinking.
And that's exactly right. And it's so they could say, well, it's true. What did I say in this story that's not true? And but the way they do it, it's subtle and it's weaving in this narrative. And so my big thing is constantly, if you stand with Israel or you stand against Hamas, they come at you with, you're a baby killer, you don't care genocide, you don't care about kids dying in Gaza. what I'm trying to show people who have been conned by that bullshit is essentially, if you care even an iota about kids in Gaza, you've got to stand with the only country trying to free them from the terrorists who are causing every second of pain that they suffer. The only country trying to free these children from terrorists who are their enemies. Israel's not their enemy. Hamas is their enemy, is Israel. You must oppose Hamas if you care. So I think a lot of people who feel like, oh, but I really care about people. I'm so humane. So I have to stand against Israel because they're killing babies. It's trying to explain to people, we're not asking you to change your values or your morals. We're trying to show you which side they align with, and it ain't the terrorists. Shock, horror. So I think those are all parts of it. It's getting that BS out in the media, that manipulative narrative that is not reflective of reality, and it's showing people that yes, we care about kids in Gaza too, and this is how we are trying to help them.
But also, it just doesn't seem to be news anymore. It's an agenda, a narrative, and they're finding the people to speak to that will speak to their narrative.
Look at BBC. The text message.
Did you see that?
We'd love someone critical of Netanyahu and the ground invasion.
It was so specific. We want somebody critical of this and critical of that. Find us that person.
The show's called News Hour. So I hosted an opinion show. I am an opinion host. I'm a commentator. It has opinion down the bottom, very loud and proud. So when people watch me, they know that this is my opinion. When I do my segment at the end of the 60-minute show on X, which is straight news, straight takes, interviews with world leaders, etc., I then do my take at the end. And I, almost to the point where it's ridiculous, I say, this is my opinion. If you're a journalist doing a news show, your only job is to present the information and the facts. Let your audience make up their mind. But all these people are disguising themselves as journalists or as news hosts. Exactly. If you host a news show, you should not be trying to support one narrative one way or the other. You should get a guest on, absolutely, and let them tell you what they think. Don't try and predetermine the way your segment will go. That's not news. You can do that in an opinion show. I would think, oh, okay, look, I'm aligned this way. I feel this way. So actually I'm going to get someone who's the opposite so that I can have a debate. So I might reach out and say, hey, to my producer, I need someone who's going to disagree with me on that. It's an opinion show, a commentary show, a debate show. Yeah. But if you run a news show, trying to line up guests that only suit a particular narrative, it should be criminal.
But it's even more dishonest than that, because in case of the BBC and other media, they take people who have Hamas and terrorist affiliations.
Of course.
And they present them as honest brokers or honest opinion makers.
People die off the back of what they are doing.
Absolutely. That's what and you know what is incredible to me? That they don't they don't understand that what they're doing then causes anti-Semitism and violence, and
everywhere.
They're not putting it together, or they don't want to put it together.
They don't. Same as the ABC in America this week quoted as fact about leaflets that were dropped by the IDF that said something to the effect of, when Gaza is destroyed, the world map won't change. And they're reporting that the IDF dropped. I mean, honest, even if you hate the IDF, you wouldn't be so stupid to think they'd actually write that on a leaflet. But they wrote that as fact. So that then gets shown to people in Gaza. It creates this even more of a toxic environment. It creates people, it ends with people dying more than they need to. There's enough people dying without them being mouthpieces for terrorists and reporting as fact things that are untrue.
And it seems also, Erin, that people forget history. You know, in the 1930s, when Jews were completely integrated in Germany and in Europe, how do you get the German people, who at the time were the most sophisticated people in Europe, to tell on their Jewish neighbor and send them to a concentration camp? It's because Goebbels was doing the same engineering of people's minds. He put a radio in everybody's house and then told them that the Jews were responsible for all their problems. And case in point, in the last 2 days, the anti-Hamas protests, who's covering this?
Yeah.
It's very anemic covering of the Palestinians rising against Hamas. Al Jazeera disappeared.
Of course
in the last 2 days.
Qatar, haven't seen it on CNN,
no,
BBC.
CNN put something up, but again, it's like the seventh point of a coverage.
But compare it to the amount of time they would have given one, something else that would suit their narrative more. I'm about to go and do a sit-down interview just on those protests themselves with an expert and go into it in great detail. It's it's a fascinating time, and it's fascinating me watching the opinion of a lot of Jewish and Israeli people to this. There's a lot of skepticism, which I understand. There's a lot of people saying, where were they on October 7? They were celebrating. They're only protesting now because Hamas lost. They don't want peace with Israel. And look, all of these things can be true at the same time. But I think you've got to grab onto anything that can help you destroy Hamas. And this is the whole, use whatever is at your disposal to destroy Hamas. And this, you'd rather this than the opposite.
Of course, and give an alternative leadership if there is one to be found.
And look, as we see in Syria, sometimes that alternative leadership can be worse. But I think, any uprising of people in Gaza that is genuine and legitimate, as long as people keep their common sense about them and don't think this means we're going to have peace, because people who are marching now can still hate Israel and still hate the Jewish community with a passion, but maybe hate Hamas just as much, if not more. So I'll watch with interest, but look, it's certainly better than the alternative.
Well, I think it's good that they're coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been saying this for months. Where are the people saying, look, you've destroyed our piece of land here. You've destroyed it.
And this is what we've been trying to say to people forever. And I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Hamas is responsible for every life lost in Gaza. Hamas is responsible for this entire thing. Hamas are the enemy of the people in Gaza. So at least now we're getting some backup from whatever their motives are. It doesn't matter. They're coming out and agreeing that Hamas is their enemy and they want them gone.
Absolutely. And the other thing I find difficult that people don't connect the dots of is internal terrorism in different countries, the Islamification of certain European countries. Maybe you can enlighten us a little bit about what's going on in Australia. I mean, we saw those terrible incidents of the nurses talking about. Is that a real threat in Australia, would you say?
I think Islamic extremism is a real threat everywhere, all around the world. And I say that as someone who grew up in Indonesia, which is home to the world's largest Islamic population. Yeah. And I speak the language fluently. Really? I was there 3 months ago catching up with women, devout Muslims who wear the hijab, who are like family, who helped raise me. So I say that as someone who has a deep respect for mainstream Muslims, peace-loving Muslims, and they exist en masse.
Absolutely.
But Islamic extremism is a threat everywhere, and mostly to them, to be honest. Absolutely. They are hurt by Islamic extremism more than anyone else, which is why I call on their voices to come out loudly. I think that's what I felt really disappointed in, is a lack of more moderate Muslim voices coming out and condemning this, because it hurts them so much, coming out and saying that is not who we are. Yeah. They do not represent us. That is not our religion. Yeah. Not on behalf of us or our God. And I feel like people think my voice is powerful because I'm not Israeli and I'm not Jewish. Tenfold Muslim voices coming out and condemning this extremism. But it's everywhere. The ideology is everywhere. It's seeping in. Protest universities. I mean, Qatar, Iran, a lot of them have done a bloody good job of infiltrating our schools, our universities, even just to the extent that kids in Australia are now growing up, they're being told in schools that their country is racist, we're colonizers. Why would they have any love for a nation that they think is racist and is awful? They're looking for purpose. And then all of a sudden this comes in and they're ripe for the picking, because our own education systems are telling them, no, we're racist and we suck and we're awful and we're a bad country and we're killing the earth and we're using coal, blah, blah, blah. So these kids are looking for something, and all of a sudden this sophisticated TikTok campaign, everything comes along, universities, it's tenfold. Yeah. And they're ripe for the picking. We're committing suicide.
I agree. Gadsad talks about suicidal empathy. And he's so right. They are taught to hate their own country. And in vast contrast to this country, where kids are taught to love their country. Yes. And that's why you have an October 7th and you have these young people willing to die for their country. God forbid. And this is really subversion. Yeah. Because they know they can't beat America militarily, or maybe Europe or NATO, but they know that they can try and deconstruct that type of pride society. And the fact that everybody's or was asleep, maybe this has woken people up, is quite incredible. And I think America with the Trump election was like, I think it was a referendum and woke. And maybe Australia will also wake up and understand this.
I hope so. And I think it gave me a lot of hope off the back of Donald Trump's win in the US. And it's funny. I mean, would I want Donald Trump to date my daughter? No. Do I like everything he does and says? No.
You don't have
to. But you don't have to.
And this is my point. Friend.
When you look at the alternative, I mean, seriously, he is the man for the moment, the hour, the job right now. And I think God help us if Kamala had gotten in. But I hope that people are seeing that. And this is, I mean, I've got a gay brother. I'm socially progressive. I'm not a right-wing nut job. I just have common sense. And that's what I think people are desperately craving. And that is what Donald Trump offers them.
Yeah.
Same as, men playing women's sports.
It's
people are
ridiculous.
happy for you to be who you are and live your life the way you want. Great. But don't go into my daughter's locker room and don't play against her in sport. Let's move on. Great. But the Democrats and Labor and the Greens and different elements of Australian, political class are just clinging on to these ridiculous tiny things that don't impact the vast majority of Australia. And they just think, enough, this is boring now. And I'm hoping that we see a similar shift. I think people are sick of it. They see that woke does not result in anything good, particularly at the forefront, the people it's meant to help. It does not.
It's ridiculous. And I think people don't even understand the Marxist roots of woke. And that really is woke.
Because people don't study history anymore, do they? Kids
exactly.
don't, except that we killed Indigenous people and we're racist.
Of course.
Now let's move on.
Looking in the context, not of hundreds of years ago, in the context of today. Like the whole silly Snow White thing that, you don't need a man to rescue you.
Can you just tell me it's still going badly, isn't it? Please tell me.
It's going really bad. I feel bad for Gal Gadot because she's such a lady.
But I feel like she would almost, I mean, it's like, when I leave a network or I leave a show, I'm not a malicious person, but there's a part of me that derives a tiny bit of joy if it kind of goes down just a little bit.
And then we're all human.
Okay, thank you. So I think Gal, given that nobody is attributing this to her or her performance.
Thank God.
Thank God. She's brilliant. She knows exactly what is going on here. And I suspect there's a tiny part of Gal that would be happy to miss out on a big paycheck just to show people that her co-star and the awful things that she brought into this that she should never have, i.e. Trump and pro-Palestine, et cetera, et cetera.
Self-destruction.
So selfish, the whole thing. I think Gal would be like, honey, I'm happy to give this one a little miss. And
exactly.
Then, but the whole premise, they're not using real dwarfs because that would be offensive. And the actual dwarfs who literally have how many roles in the world?
Little people
who
are saying...
actives. Little people are saying, what? That doesn't help us.
Exactly.
We don't get a job now. This was one, a lot of actors are saying that this is one of the only roles we can play. So they're hurting the people they're trying to help.
It's the same mentality as BDS when everybody said to SodaStream, close up because you're over the green line. You know who lost their jobs? All those Palestinians over the green line. They were the ones who lost out. It's ridiculous. It's almost... It's this kind of numbness through life that you don't get really to critically think. That's what it is. I think it's the compromise or critical thinking is compromised.
But one of the things that I've really noticed is this inability that people have to look at something or new information and evolve their stance. So, for example, Russia, Ukraine, I'm banned in Russia because I called Vladimir Putin a warlord.
Yeah.
And I don't move away from that. I think that he is. But over the last few months, I've seen elements of Zelensky that have made me less confident in him as a leader. It doesn't change my stance that Russia invaded Ukraine illegally.
Exactly.
I stand with the innocent people in Ukraine, but I'm allowed to evolve with new information and say, okay, so I'm not as staunch behind Zelensky as I was 6 months ago because I've had new information. It's the same in this space. Even the Bebas babies. I know a lot of people privately went, oh God, I may have picked the wrong side here. Oh dear, I may have been... And they've said it to me privately, but won't come out publicly because they're worried about being annihilated. And I think what we need to do better on all sides is allow people with new information to say, hey, I thought one thing and God, that's a bit embarrassing. No, it's not. This is a sophisticated thing that is getting millions of people. Don't be embarrassed. But now I realize actually that they are terrorists and that my support is hurting them. And amazing, welcome, great. Instead of annihilating them or saying, I think we
or
need
doubling down.
Doubling down.
Even when you have information.
Double down.
Because they're too invested in it.
And because everything's so public now, it's not like we're just having conversations. If we were living in a society where we had conversations, you could very easily say, oh God, someone showed me this thing of Zelensky's bank accounts. And I was like, oh my God, he's dodgy.
Yeah.
But because everything's recorded, even people who are not famous are posting online. So there's a history now to what they've thought and said, which makes them double down.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the most dangerous things we're facing in that I hate echo chambers. I listen to, I'm constantly challenging myself. I'm always trying to learn differently and trying to expose myself to different ways of thinking. And if something challenges, rather than be embarrassed or try and hide it or try and avoid it, I go, okay, and maybe it doesn't change my perspective, maybe it does, but we should be allowed to change based on information and not be afraid to change our stance.
That's what critical thinking and nuance actually is.
Yeah.
So Erin, really, again, I know you're getting a wonderful prize by Israel today, and you have done such great work, and you continue to be such a voice of reason, sanity, in pretty much an insane world. And so we're very grateful for you. We thank you, and you're always welcome in Israel and in our studios anytime you're here.
Bless you. And thank you, Fleur, for your incredible support. I remember being sent a piece that you'd done so early on, and I think it was in the midst of, I remember my inbox, and it was, die, 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 daughter, die, die, die. Oh, this beautiful lady in Israel did this beautiful piece.
Hero of the week. You were our hero of the week.
And I remember watching it, and it just gave me so much comfort to realize that, yes, it's hard what I'm doing, but it gives people hope and it comforts people who need it desperately. And I'm so grateful to you for everything that you were doing. And if I don't get a hosting role on the Quad one day soon,
you are coming back.
Hosting role.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Do I want to be Joy or do I want to be Whoopi?
We have our own personalities. You pick whatever you want.
Amazing. Thank
God
you
bless
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Erin Molan.
Thank you.